Have you ever missed an exit while driving at night? You probably just take the next one. That's what I did. Except the next exit took me somewhere that wasn't on my GPS, and when I finally found my way back to the highway, I realized I had been driving in circles for nearly 3 hours. The worst part? I wasn't alone anymore. I was driving home from visiting my cousin. It was supposed to be an easy 4-hour trip. I left around 9 at night because I preferred driving when the roads were quiet. By midnight, I was somewhere between two small towns, surrounded by farmland and long stretches of forest. There was almost nothing around me. No restaurants, no gas stations, barely any houses. Just the highway and the occasional reflective road sign. I remember thinking how peaceful it was. Then I missed my exit. It wasn't a big deal. The GPS immediately recalculated. It told me to take the next exit in about 12 miles. So I kept driving. About 15 minutes later, I saw the sign. Exit 17. I took it. The road immediately became narrower. There were no streetlights, no businesses, just trees on both sides. My GPS showed a short route that would eventually reconnect with the highway. I wasn't worried at first. Then I noticed something strange. There was another road sign. It said, "Welcome to Miller's Crossing." I'd never heard of the place. I drove past it. A few minutes later, I saw a gas station. It looked old, almost abandoned. There were 2 cars parked outside, but every window was dark. I considered stopping, but something about the place made me uncomfortable. So I kept driving. Then my GPS said, "Continue straight for 0.5 miles." I did, and 5 minutes later, I was looking at the exact same gas station. Same 2 cars, same dark windows, same broken sign above the entrance. I slowed down. I thought maybe I'd somehow turned around, but I hadn't. I checked my GPS. It showed me moving forward. I continued. 10 minutes later, the gas station appeared again. This time I stopped. I got out of the car. The air was cold. Too cold. I walked toward the entrance. The door was unlocked. Inside, the lights were on. But there was nobody behind the counter. The shelves were almost completely empty. I called out. No answer. Then I noticed a handwritten sign taped to the counter. It said, "Don't take the old road." I stared at it. I didn't understand. Then I heard footsteps somewhere in the back. I immediately walked out. I got into my car and locked the doors. My GPS still showed the highway only 20 minutes away. So I followed it. The road eventually split. The GPS told me to turn left. I did. 5 minutes later, I saw the gas station again. This time, there was someone standing outside. A man. He was facing away from me. I slowed down. As I passed him, he turned his head. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I saw one thing. He was smiling. I kept driving. My GPS suddenly went blank. The screen displayed only one message: "Turn around." I ignored it. Then my phone lost signal. I was completely alone. Or at least I thought I was, because after another 10 minutes, I noticed headlights behind me. One vehicle, far away. I sped up. The headlights sped up too. I turned onto another road. The vehicle followed. I turned again. It followed. Eventually, I reached another intersection. There was a sign, Highway 6, 2 miles. I nearly cried with relief. I drove toward it. Then I saw something in my rearview mirror. The headlights behind me were gone, but someone was sitting in my back seat. I slammed on the brakes. I turned around. Nobody. The back seat was empty. I checked the doors. Locked. I looked forward again, and that's when I realized something. I was back in front of the gas station. Again. But this time, there were dozens of cars parked outside. Every single one looked abandoned. I stepped out and looked at their license plates. Different states, different years. Some were covered in dust. One car had a newspaper sitting on the dashboard. The date was from 12 years ago. Then I noticed something else. Every car had the driver's door open. I ran back to mine. Before I could start the engine, someone knocked on my window. I froze. It was the man from the road. He was standing beside my driver's door. He leaned toward the glass and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then he pointed behind me. I looked into the rearview mirror. There were people standing behind my car, dozens of them, all staring at me. I started the engine. I didn't care where the road went. I drove. I drove straight through the intersection. The road became wider. The trees disappeared. And suddenly, I was back on the highway. There were trucks, streetlights, gas stations, normal traffic. My phone immediately regained signal. The GPS restarted. It showed my location. I pulled over and sat there shaking. Then I noticed something. The GPS displayed my previous route. There was no exit 17. There was no Miller's Crossing. There was no gas station. Nothing. I drove home without stopping. The next morning, I searched online for Miller's Crossing. I found an old newspaper article. Apparently, there had once been a small town there, but 12 years earlier, a massive highway expansion project had relocated the entire community. The old road was demolished. The gas station had been abandoned, and according to the article, 17 people disappeared during the final week before the road was closed. I stared at the screen, then I noticed the date of the article. It was exactly 12 years old, and underneath the article was a photograph of the old gas station, the same one I'd seen. Except there was something in the picture I hadn't noticed before. Standing outside the entrance was the man, and beside him were the 17 missing people. I closed the browser. I never drove that highway again. But sometimes, when I'm driving late at night, my GPS suddenly shows an exit that isn't there. Exit 17. And every time it appears, the route says the same thing. Continue straight. The strangest thing about picking up a stranger on a dark highway isn't knowing who they are. It's realizing they know things about you that you never told them. I learned that at 2:13 in the morning when a man standing beside the road asked me for a ride. I should have driven past him. Instead, I stopped, and he got into my car. I was driving back from a weekend trip with friends. They had stayed another night. I had work Monday morning, so I left alone. The highway was almost completely empty. It was around 2 a.m. when I saw him, a man standing beside the shoulder. He looked like he had been waiting there for hours. His clothes were soaked. He held one hand up. I slowed down. Then I remembered every warning I'd ever heard about picking up strangers. I kept driving. Then I checked my rearview mirror. The man was still standing there, except now he was much farther away than he should have been. I looked forward again. My heart started beating faster. I couldn't explain it. Maybe the darkness had distorted the distance. Maybe I was tired. I kept driving. About 5 minutes later, I saw him again. Same clothes, same posture, same spot beside the road. I drove past him. This time, I didn't look back. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again. I ignored it. Then a text appeared. You forgot me. I stared at the screen. Another message came. Please turn around. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat. I decided to stop at the next gas station. A few miles later, I saw one. I pulled in. There were several cars parked near the pumps. I got out and went inside. The cashier looked at me, then looked past me toward my car. His face changed. He asked, "Did you pick someone up?" I said no. He stared at me for a moment. Then he said, "Don't." I didn't understand. He pointed toward my car. There was someone sitting in the passenger seat. My blood went cold. I hadn't left anyone inside. I walked back slowly. The passenger door was locked. The windows were closed. Nobody was there. I opened the door. Empty. I checked the back seat. Nothing. I laughed nervously and told myself I was exhausted. Then I noticed something. The passenger seat was wet. A dark patch covered the fabric, like someone had been sitting there in soaking clothes. I drove away. I didn't stop again. About 20 minutes later, the man appeared on the road, standing beside the shoulder. I almost swerved into the opposite lane. Then I saw something impossible. He wasn't standing there. He was sitting beside me. I slammed the brakes. The car stopped. He was completely still. His clothes were dripping water onto the floor. I couldn't move. He looked at me. Then he said, "You shouldn't have stopped the first time." I couldn't speak. He pointed toward the road. "Keep driving." I asked him where he wanted to go. He didn't answer. I asked again. He looked at me and said my name, my full name. I had never told him. Then he said, "I know where we're going." I drove. For the next 30 minutes, he said almost nothing. Eventually, he pointed toward an old road. "Turn here." I refused. He repeated it. I kept driving. Then my GPS showed something strange. The road I was on no longer existed on the map. The highway disappeared. The city disappeared. Everything around us became dark. No streetlights, no buildings, no other cars, just trees. The man finally spoke. "My house is just ahead." I looked at him. "Where?" He pointed. I saw a small house through the trees. One porch light was on. He told me to stop. I did. He opened the passenger door. Before getting out, he looked at me. "Thank you." Then he disappeared into the darkness. I watched the house. The porch light turned off. I waited. Nothing happened. Eventually, I drove away. When I reached the highway again, everything returned to normal. The next morning, I told my friend what happened. He went completely silent. Then he asked me where I'd taken the stranger. I described the road, the house, the porch light. My friend pulled out his phone. He searched something. Then he showed me a news article. 3 years earlier, a man had died in a car accident on that same highway. The accident happened at 2:13 a.m. He had been driving home. His car had gone off the road. He died instantly. The article included his photograph. It was the man I had picked up. I stared at the picture. Then I noticed something. The date of the accident. It was exactly 3 years ago. And the location? The same stretch of highway. I thought that was the end. Until I checked my car. There was still water on the passenger seat. And underneath it was a small photograph. A family standing outside a house. The same house I'd seen. On the back was handwritten, "He keeps asking for a ride home." I threw the photograph away. I sold the car a week later. But the strangest thing happened months afterward. I was driving another car, different highway, different city, different state. It was 2:13 a.m., and I saw a man standing on the shoulder, soaked from head to toe. He raised his hand. I kept driving, but as I passed him, my phone received a text. Unknown number. 4 words. You forgot me again. There was nothing wrong with the road when we entered the mountains. That's what makes this difficult to explain. The road had signs, guardrails, fresh pavement. Everything looked normal, but after we turned around, the road was different. And after the 3rd time, we realized it wasn't leading us anywhere. It was following us. 4 of us went on a weekend road trip. Nothing unusual. We wanted to get away from work, phones, and the city. We found a small mountain town several hours away and decided to take a scenic route. The GPS suggested a shortcut. It would save us almost an hour. We took it. At first, the road was beautiful. Tall pine trees, rocky cliffs, clouds hanging low over the mountains. There were almost no other vehicles. Then we passed a sign. Road closed ahead. We laughed. The GPS still said the road was open. A few minutes later, we reached a fork. One road continued uphill. The other descended into the forest. The GPS told us to take the lower road. We did. About 10 minutes later, we realized there was no cell signal. That wasn't unusual in the mountains. Then we passed the same red mailbox twice. One of my friends noticed. Didn't we already pass that? I looked at the road behind us. Nothing. We continued. 5 minutes later, the mailbox appeared again. Same color, same dent on the side, same faded number. We stopped. Nobody wanted to say it. Eventually, we turned around. We drove back the way we'd come. The road seemed normal. Then we reached the fork. The GPS showed that we were still on the lower road. That made no sense. We decided to go back to the main highway. The GPS recalculated. It gave us a new route. We followed it. 20 minutes later, we passed a wooden sign. Welcome to Black Pine. None of us had heard of the town. There were several houses scattered through the trees. Then we saw a diner. We stopped. Inside, there was one waitress. She looked at us, then at our car, then back at us. She asked, "Which road did you take?" We told her. Her expression changed. She asked, "Did you turn around?" We said yes. She sighed. Then she told us something I'll never forget. "Don't turn around again." We laughed nervously. She didn't. She told us the mountain road had been closed for years. People occasionally drove onto it anyway. Some came back, some didn't. But according to her, the ones who turned around were the ones who disappeared. We thanked her and left. Nobody spoke for several minutes. Then one of us looked behind us. The diner was gone. Not hidden. Gone. There were only trees. We stopped the car. We looked at the GPS. It showed us driving toward the highway. We kept going. Eventually, we reached a bridge. We crossed it. Then another bridge. Then another. 3 identical bridges. Same railing, same cracked pavement, same tree growing beside the road. We realized we were looping. We decided to stop following the GPS. We picked a direction and drove. 10 minutes later, we reached the same bridge. One of my friends started crying. Another wanted to get out and walk. We refused. We kept driving. Then the road changed. The pavement became old. The guardrails disappeared. The trees moved closer. and the road became so narrow that branches scraped both sides of the car. Then we saw something ahead, a row of vehicles parked along the road. Every one of them was abandoned. Old cars, trucks, vans, some covered in leaves. Others looked almost new. We stopped. On one windshield was a piece of paper. It said, "Don't turn around." We stared at it. Then we heard something behind us. A car engine. Our car was off. We looked in the rearview mirror. A vehicle was approaching, slowly. It was an old sedan. The headlights were off. It stopped behind us. Nobody got out. We waited. Then the sedan slowly began moving forward. It drove directly through our car. For a split second, everything went dark. Then we were back on the highway, real highway, traffic, street lights, buildings. We pulled over. Nobody spoke. We checked the time. Only 11 minutes had passed, but our phones showed that we had been missing for nearly 6 hours. We drove home immediately. Nobody wanted to discuss what happened until we received a message. It came from the friend who had been sitting in the back seat. The message was sent to all 4 of us. It contained one photograph. It was a picture of our car, taken from behind. We were driving through the mountain road, but the picture had been taken from inside another vehicle, and in the reflection of our rear windshield, there were 5 people inside our car. We counted again. 4 of us, always 4. We tried calling the friend who had sent the photograph. His phone was disconnected. He didn't answer. We went to his house. His family told us he had never returned from the trip. They had assumed he stayed with us, but we knew he had been sitting beside us the entire drive home. At least, we thought he had. A week later, I looked at the photograph again. I zoomed in. The 5th person wasn't sitting in the back. They were sitting in the driver's seat. And suddenly I understood why the road had kept changing, why the GPS had failed, why the diner disappeared, why the abandoned cars were there. The road wasn't trapping us. It was replacing us, one by one. I haven't gone near the mountain since, but every few months, my GPS does something strange. Even when I'm nowhere near that area, it briefly displays a road I've never seen before. No name, no number, just a single destination, Black Pine, and beneath it, the estimated arrival time always says 11 minutes.